Endurance Junkie podcast, episode 52. Hey there, Junkie. Welcome to episode 52 of the Endurance Junkie podcast, the show where I will be interviewing some of the fastest, smartest, and most inspiring people active in the endurance world today. Kevin Koskella is a swim expert who teaches triathletes and swimmers alike how to swim faster with less effort through proper technique. He's a contributor to Triathlete, Inside Triathlon, Men's Health, Active.com, and BeginnerTriathlete.com. Kevin was a collegiate All-American swimmer too, and still races from time to time. Kevin, thanks for taking the time to chat here today. Now, for those of us who don't know you, can you start off by telling us a bit about yourself, your own sporting background, and how you ended up as a swim coach?
Sure, and thanks, Peter, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. So I started tryswimcoach.com about 11 years ago now. And before that, I competed in swimming most of my life in age group swimming here in the U.S. and swam competitively through college and was able to have some success in the college scene there in Division II school in California. And it was pretty much my whole life through about age 22. I didn't really do much of anything else or think about much of anything else besides swimming. And I got out of school and wasn't sure exactly what to do with myself. But a few years later, I started just coaching masters swimming, which was really fun for me. I had never really actually coached before that. So being able to coach adults was a perfect fit for me because I love teaching them. I love the aspect of teaching, and the fact that in my area there were no resources for adults learning to swim or training or anything like that. It was all the swim lesson programs were geared towards kids. So I just kind of started my own little swim lesson business and just started taking on adults and doing private lessons and just loved it. And I started noticing that almost everybody coming to me was a triathlete or someone that was looking to do a triathlon and struggling with swimming. So it was just this pattern. So I was like, oh, there must be more people around the world that have the same issue, that they want to compete in something like triathlon, but they just don't have the swimming skills they need. So I started tryswimcoach.com then, and then I ended up writing a book, Complete Guide to Triathlon Swimming, and I just kind of made that my focus is in the triathlon swimming niche. And and then we've been adding products, and then we added a membership site so people can get more in-depth training and coaching, and then here we are today, and we're doing a monthly program now as well.
Okay, so yourself, you don't really have a background in triathlon, just the swimming.
I did triathlon for 2 years, and I really loved it, but I found that my skill set is more geared towards swimming, and I'm not a horrible runner, but I am a horrible biker. So I decided to focus on swimming since that's what I really love and that's what I excel at. And so I did open water swimming for years, and I still do it when I can myself. But right now I'm actually recovering from a couple of shoulder rotator cuff injuries. So that's something that is kind of kept me out of the water for a few months here, which is really tough. But I don't really, these days I am more of a teacher and a coach than a competitor.
Okay. And other people that come to you or that came to you in the beginning when you started Try Swim Coach, was that people who actually wanted to learn swimming, or did you have like people who had a basic or base in swimming and wanted to perfect their stroke?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of had a variety of people. I'd say the majority were beginner level. Like most people had swum at some point in the past. Maybe they learned as a kid, like Red Cross. We have like American Red Cross swimming, which is unfortunately they teach a technique that really is tough to make it work if you're talking about distance swimming, because it's focused on arms and legs. So what you're doing with your arms and legs, which is kind of, that's what you'd think with swimming. You'd think that's what we use. We use our arms and legs to go forward, but it's counterintuitive what really works, because that's kind of you put that aside and you really look at what you need to be a successful swimmer, and it's more of the balance in the water and being able to not sink and things like that. So, but yeah, as far as the people that I was coaching back then, yeah, everything from I had people that had never been in the water, that they had never been in the water. I remember a guy that actually he wanted to learn how to swim because he was going on a diving trip, and he had never swam in his life, and he was like in his late 20s. So, but we brought him up to a level where he was swimming laps by the time we were finished within about 6-8 lessons. So, there's stuff like that. Was really fun and exciting. And then there's also, like, I even had a professional triathlete that hired me at one point, and we were working on something that was part of her stroke. She thought maybe it was causing back problems, and we were able to determine what it was and then fix that, and then she was much better off. So, yeah, all sorts of different levels out there and different types of needs, and yeah, I like looking at all of them.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, definitely, because triathlon is a growing sport, and I guess more and more people are picking it up. But, when I talk to other people that do have an interest in the sport, they always tell me that, swimming is the part that sort of scares them off. What advice do you have for these kind of people to help them conquer that hurdle and that fear of swimming?
Yeah, so that's very common. It's almost everybody I talk to that wants to do a triathlon, they're kind of worried about the swim, and that's like because we all grew up running at some point.
Most we can all run, we can all ride a bike.
Yeah, it's land sports. It's what we're kind of naturally geared towards. But swimming is a whole different animal because we're not meant to be water creatures. So it totally makes sense why people would have a fear of the water. It logically makes complete sense. But what I teach is, getting over that fear is a huge thing. And so, first of all, just realizing that we're not natural in the water. So even the fastest swimmer in the world, like let's say Michael Phelps, he's not natural in the water. Nobody is natural. So you don't. There's no such thing as a natural swimmer in reality. So we all have to learn to swim at some point. So and then it's just a matter of how you do it. So there are really effective ways, and then there are ways that really are ineffective or that take a long time. But I try to stick with the ways that you can have an adequate freestyle in a short period of time. It's probably not going to win you any races, but you can get through a triathlon swim or an open water swim without feeling like you're just dead tired at the end.
Okay. Well, can you go into a bit more detail about your coaching philosophy? How do you start with people?
Yeah, so a lot of people were taught, like I said earlier, using your arms and your legs for swimming, and they're swimming flat in the water, so there's no hip rotation. So it's just cranking it out, powering your way through the water, which is really difficult. I mean, if you're going to swim one length or maybe 3-4 lengths like that, just muscling your way through, it's doable. But if you're doing anything in any sort of distance of swimming, that's going to wear you out really quickly because you're just using all your energy in your arms and legs. So what's important is to develop a rotation. So your body needs to rotate through the water so that you are at the optimal position when you take each stroke, instead of being flat, which is it creates a lot of drag. And that's where people start, is they start flat, and then I teach them how to rotate through the water, and number one, and that involves some balance drills and things to get you used to being, just kind of being in the water and being on top of the water, on the surface, as opposed to sinking. And then the second thing is the pull. So the pull is so important. There's all sorts of different ways that people learn how to pull through the water. But the most effective way is I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of this, but maybe you don't know exactly what it is. It's the high elbow pulls, or the high elbow catch, where you're extending your arm out and then you're keeping your elbow high as you pull through the water. So you're bending your elbow and then pulling back kind of to the outside of your body. And obviously it's tough to give a swimming lesson here on a podcast without having picture demos and videos and stuff like that. But I found that those two things are just crucial to learning how to swim properly for an open water swim or a triathlon.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of your athletes use tools like the pull buoy and then the paddles and fins and stuff like that.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a great question. The equipment, I'm kind of a minimalist when it comes to equipment.
Okay.
I love fins. I think fins are one of the best tools out there for learning to swim quickly, improving your swim, and being able to do some of the drills without worrying about your body sinking. So you just put the fins on, and then you can forget about your kick. And if you use like the short fins, like the Zoomers, there's a few other brands out there. Those will help you actually improve your kick as well. So you use them when you're doing some of the drills, and you can get the drills, improve your kick. I don't really like them so much as a tool to go faster, like to swim with fins on, but as far as learning, it's great. And then pull buoys, I'm not super excited about pull buoys. I think there is a place for them, learning specific things in terms of your pull. But I think people in general, especially the triathletes, they start to rely on them way too much. And yeah, I see people doing most of their workouts with a pull buoy because it makes it a lot easier to swim. And so it's so I think it has its place, but I'm not as excited about pull buoys. Although I've changed a little bit over the years. I think when I first started coaching, I was like anti pull buoy. I was completely against them. And now, in the past few years, I've seen that there are uses for them, and there are things that you can do that will help. And then the paddles, there's a lot of great paddles out there. I never really used paddles in my training. I tend to get shoulder injuries, and some of the paddles that I used were aggravating those shoulder injuries. But these days, there are paddles that can actually help you get the pull a little better. So I know that Finis makes some, the Freestyler, that are great, and I do recommend those. But I focus more on the actual technique and less on the equipment. So I think that you can do everything with no equipment. Some of the equipment makes it a little bit easier, but it's not 100% necessary.
Cool. Yeah, I can definitely relate to relying on that pull buoy. When I was an active triathlete myself, it was just an excuse to give the legs some rest after a bike ride or a run. Definitely makes things easier. Yeah, you recently published a great 3-part blog series on the website, triswimcoach.com, about getting faster in the water on just 3 swims a week, which is, I think, a pretty good average for a triathlete. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was actually written by my assistant, Chris Haig, just to give all credit where credit's due.
Okay.
But we share the same philosophy, so definitely, 3 days a week. I think everybody can train for a triathlon on 3 swims a week. If you're at the more of the beginner level, like let's say you have a pretty decent bike and run, but your swimming is really needs a lot of work, I would go up to 4 days on the swim. But 3 days is totally doable, and mainly the things that you need to get in terms of those 3 days, you need to get the feel for the water, number one. And a lot of people don't know exactly what that means. What's the feel for the water? Well, once you sort of start getting into the water and swimming and doing drills, and you start to develop sort of more of a comfort level with being in water, being submerged in water. And that's something that can be lost, depending on the person. It can be lost within a few days or a couple weeks, but the more that you can get in, the better. And so three days means that the most you're going to be out of the water is maybe 2-3 days. So you'll keep that feel for the water going, and I think that's really important. And then the second thing is when we're talking about minimizing your training, it really comes down to, with swimming, it comes down to the idea of efficiency and quality workouts, as opposed to just getting in and doing, like, let's say 3,000 meters. That's not really going to do you much good. But if you break that up and you do a workout that you have very specific intentions and it has a very specific purpose, then you can get away with less. So, and I noticed that you had the guy from CrossFit Endurance, Brian McKenzie,
Yeah.
on your show. Yeah, and I had him on my show as well. And that's sort of the philosophy. I really like what he's doing and what that sort of philosophy with training, which is not necessarily doing a huge amount of distance, but more focusing on how can you get the most out of each workout. And so that's what I tend to do. So quality would mean like doing sets of interval sets. It can be breaking up and doing every time you do a workout, making sure you're doing a set of drills, specific drills that will help you, and then incorporating sprints. So there's a lot of different, aspects to it. Now pacing, that is another thing we talk about. That can be done with interval training. So if you were to jump in the water and do 1,500 meters straight, it's kind of boring and it probably isn't going to do a lot for you. So what we would do is say, okay, let's do 15 100s and pick an interval. So maybe your interval is 1 minute 45 seconds. And so every time you do a 100 meters, you touch the wall, look at the clock, and then you get some rest, and then you go again. So then you can sort of develop your pace. You can say, okay, this set I'm going to do 5 at a moderate pace, 5 at a fast pace, and then 5 a little bit slower, and just sort of adjust from there. And then I mentioned this already, but speed is the other thing that we focus on. And we don't have to do a lot of sprints when training for a triathlon swim, because most of them are long enough to that even a sprint triathlon isn't really a sprint when it comes to the swim, because it's probably going to be 500, 600, 700, 800 meters, and you're in the open water. So it's still a distance. It's still going to be a distance swim. But sprinting in your workouts approximately once a week is going to help you to get faster. So it is a great thing to incorporate, and that's something that can be done on the 3-day-a-week program as well.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you there that you need to have a purpose for every workout that you do, and that I think there's a lot of this philosophy that a lot of coaches are using these days is to get rid of the really junk miles. But what I hear, and also from the interview that I had with Brian and a couple of other coaches, is about the quality. People still seem to start doing less and more quality, yet they somehow have established a base of a couple of years where they did do long distance. So they had this real big aerobic engine that allowed them to do these, short bursts of high intensity training. What's your take on that?
Yeah, building a base is great. I mean, that's a lot of the people that swam in college probably have a pretty good base, because we were doing like double workouts, and here in the US we talk yards instead of meters, but it's like, we would be up to like 10,000 yards a day. And this is for years. And if you swam as a kid, that's just years of building up this base. So that can last for a few years after you're done, and you still have that base behind you, even though you haven't swam in a year or two. You still have somewhat of that later on. So yeah, building a base is great. And what I focus on in Tri Swim Coach is more the people that have come to us that want to train for a race, and they have like 3 months or 4 months or something. Okay. Not necessarily somebody that can spend 2 years training, but someone that's like, hey, I want to do this Olympic distance race and I want to train. And then we just give them, we'll give them like a 12-week program. And the initial phase is going to be technique, and then we'll start building that base. But yeah, you can do a lot there. Nothing, I say this over and over, and it gets kind of tiring for people, but nothing can replace technique. So whether it's just swimming tons and tons of laps, or working on your strength or something else, it doesn't matter. Like, the first thing you need to absolutely focus on is your technique. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm definitely with you there. What would you recommend people to start focusing on if they it's early February now, say they have a race in June, so that leaves them about 4 months. How would you go about creating a program for these people?
Yeah, so it depends on where they are right now, what level they are. I mean, some people worked on drills all through the off season, or maybe they last year kind of more or less perfected their stroke, but other people are coming in brand new, and you have a race 4 months later. I would spend as much time as you possibly can doing drills. And I mean, we have a program in Tri Swim Coach that kind of builds you up. So you start out with some of the basic drills, and you get into more advanced, and then you start incorporating full stroke swimming. But you can do it. You can do it on your own, and you can actually, just spend as much time as you want. So I always say, okay, 2 weeks, don't swim at all, no swimming, just drills, just follow this kind of format of, start with the basics and then build your way up, and then start incorporating the swimming. And that's, if you have 4 months to train, you can do that. If you have 2 months to train, that's a little tougher, because you're not building up your endurance, you're not building up your speed, so you're kind of cutting it close. But But I would say, yeah, I would say, spend 2 weeks no swimming and then start incorporating the swim, because what can happen is if you start swimming a little too early, you might already have some bad habits, and then you're just accentuating those bad habits, and then it becomes tougher later. So yeah, I mean, the drills is still everything when it comes to the beginning, and then we can kind of add things to it later.
Yeah. So is it drill something that you incorporate during the entire length of the program, or do you just base?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I still, even advanced swimmers, I still have them do drills. It's always good to go back and do some of the drills, and there's more advanced drills that can help you later with different things. But yeah, there's never a time where I say, okay, now we're done with drills. So
do you place them at the beginning of a workout, or at the end, or both ends, or?
Typically towards the beginning, it's kind of set the foundation, but we'll do some things at the end sometimes as well.
Yeah. Yeah, to use keep using proper technique on tired muscles, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Do you send your athletes to the gym? Do they do any core work or something?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in strength training. I think that it helps a lot with swimming, and it's tough because we're talking triathlon, and there's so many things to do. So people sometimes can be overwhelmed by all the different things that they can do, and but I think strength training is pretty amazing for what it can do for swimming. At the same time, again, you can't replace strength training with technique, because a lot of times what happens is newer swimmers will get in the water and they'll struggle, and they'll be looking for a solution to get over that struggle, and they'll think, well, I'm just weak in the water. Everyone else is swimming, they seem to be much stronger in the water. So the natural thing is to think, okay, I just need to build up my muscles, build up my strength, and then I'll be better in the water. But that's actually not true. It doesn't work like that. You're just building muscles, and if you don't have the proper technique, it's still going to be difficult for you. So that's where I think once you've kind of built your technique up to a point where you're doing a triathlon swim, you're able to have energy left over at the end, then you can start working on the strength training. And there's a lot of different things you can do in the gym. I'm also a proponent of yoga. I think yoga is amazing for swimming, and that can also be part of your strength training routine, because it's not just stretching, it's also working on different muscles and really opening you up. So yeah, I mean, I think that all of that is great, and I definitely encourage that and incorporate it into the workout plans.
Yeah. So, but if you're not the greatest swimmer, and you can choose between a workout in the gym or an extra session in the pool, you definitely go for another session in the pool.
Total, yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things where it's like, how much time do you have? It's like, if you have the time and you want to really do this thing, then yeah, like start doing a couple strength training sessions every week. But if you're in a real hurry and this is just a really small part of your life, then I would definitely say get in the pool over trying to jump into the gym.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, we've been talking pool most of the time now, so let's move on to open water. When do you feel like athletes should start adding open water swimming into their training routine, and how do you think beginners can get that hurdle of open water swimming? Because it can be a frightening experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the toughest things about the open water is that there's just so many things that people are afraid of. There's a lot of fear. And I did this program a couple of years ago where we were just teaching people how to get over those fears. And we would do all sorts of different techniques on that, breathing and just what you're thinking about while you're out there. Like there's a lot of different ways you can kind of psychologically prepare yourself to not have those fears overtake you, because that is a big problem. And yeah, I have like I said, I have 12-week programs. By the 4th week, we're doing open water swimming, and I'd say do it at least once a week. There should be some kind of balance, because you can do so much in the pool with your technique, and then in the open water, it's a little tougher to work on technique because there's so many other elements to deal with. But you need to get out there and experience it. You need to not have your race be the first time that you're in the open water, because the first time I ever personally did an open water swim, I had really never done anything like that before. So I did this lake swim, and I had been training. I was in college, and I had been training. I was in great shape for swimming, but I got out in the open water, and I started hyperventilating and it was quite an experience. I never knew anything about like that it would be so different, but it is quite different. So but a little preparation can go a long way there. And but yeah, I would say get in there once a week and try to balance it out with pool sessions and open water sessions. Because another thing that although like I do encourage the social aspect of swimming and triathlon, sometimes I've met a lot of triathletes that all they do is open water swim. Like that's the only training they do. And that's fine. If you're just looking to have fun and you're not worried too much, then go for it. But if you're really looking to have a great race and a great training, then you are better off doing some pool swimming.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Any tips on maybe how to sort of mimic race condition in open water? Because there's a difference between swimming by yourself in open water and then actually having to go through a mass start in a race.
Yeah, there's a funny video if you look up on YouTube. It's by Cliff Bar, and they have it says preparation for a triathlon swim, and it's got this guy. He's on the beach and he's got his wetsuit on, he's got his cap on, and he's ready to go. And there's these people there's like these boats next to him, and he jumps in the water and the boats kind of follow him along, and they beat him up with they have these big poles, and they're beating him over the head, and they're like just hitting him to kind of mimic the open water start. It's kind of just a comedy routine, but it's kind of true. I mean, you can't really know what it feels like until you've done it. So a lot of that is being relaxed going into the swim, and we teach the kind of the deep breathing method before a race, because there's so many reasons there's so many things that can make you sort of feel that anxiety, and that's the last thing you want when you're jumping in the water with 100 other people, and they're all going to be touching you, and you're probably going to get hit at some point. Your ankle's going to be grabbed, and all of that needs to be considered beforehand, because if it's just happening to you, it's easy to be completely thrown off in every way, and you can hyperventilate. Your stroke is going to be off. You could mentally just kind of break down, because it's easy to get angry because you think someone's like trying to hold you back. But yeah, I mean, just expecting that, doing the deep breathing, and definitely practicing it in the water. You could get in with friends and just swim next to them. I mean, that type of thing, just getting used to it is really important. And then as far as the race day goes, I always tell people especially the beginners, not to worry about how fast you're going in the water, especially that first part where everybody's trying to get position around the first buoy. A lot of times what happens is it's just this big bunch just trying to get right up there and make that turn. Whereas you could start a little to the outside, and you'll have open water. You'll have not nearly as much contact with other swimmers. And yeah, you're going to swim a little bit further because you're not aligned perfectly with the buoy. But does that really matter? In the long run, that usually is not going to matter unless you're trying to get on that podium, which most people aren't. So it's there's always a much easier way of doing it. I do this too. I mean, I try to go, even if I'm trying to compete in an open water swim, I'll try to start a little to the outside, because I know that I'll be better off in the course of the race. Whereas I may not get first around that first buoy, but then later on I can catch up, whereas everybody was sprinting and using all their energy at the beginning.
Yeah, no, I definitely relate to that. I mean, I think my first Ironman race that I did, I just got trapped between the rope and some swimmers on my left hand side, and for the entire swim, I wasn't able to swim my own pace at all, I maybe swam just exactly 2.6 miles, but I came out of water pretty knackered, and races that I did afterwards, I definitely kept it to the outside and maybe swam 100 yards more, but it was my own pace and completely at ease, and just came out of the water completely relaxed and ready to get on the bike. Do you have some advice maybe about pacing that swim? And would you have different tactics for an Olympic distance race or an Ironman race?
You can kind of apply the same tactics for both. I mean, Olympic distance is typically the mileage or the distance is 1.2 miles, and then the Ironman is going to be 2.4. Yeah. So it's quite a bit longer. But what I like to do is have people build the race, and not to say that you're going from 0 to 100%, but more like the beginning of the race is very tempting to really put all your effort into that first part, because there's so much excitement going on, and you just want to like you just want to go, and most people have that same mentality. It's just like, I just go and go as fast as you can, and then you will die. Your race will fall apart by the end of the swim. You'll be so tired because of that sprint, of that 300-meter sprint that you did at the beginning. So I like to pace it so that you're kind of going from a moderate pace at the beginning. So just, nice, easy, just make sure you have your tempo, you have your rhythm down. And even though there's a lot of chaos going on around you, just keep focusing on, I like to do the counting. So either just go 1, 2, 1, 2, or, just count all your strokes. Just count every stroke until you get to that first buoy. But just keeping that rhythm is so important. And then you can sort of build it. So then after the first turn, then you go a little bit faster, and then you just build it up. And then you can kind of gauge it, like, how are you feeling halfway through the race? If you've got some energy, turn it on a little bit there. And then you've got like your third quarter would be your fastest. So there's the first quarter, the second quarter, and then the third quarter. I would say go the fastest there. And then the last part of the race, it's not that you're getting to this all-out sprint at the end and you get on your bike and you're out of breath, but more like you've already built up the race to this level of speed, and then you just kind of continue that on through the end of the swim. And that seems to keep people from giving everything or laying it all out there at the beginning of the race, and instead just sort of looking at it as like, you're building up. And part of it is too, the beginning of a swim, you're warming up. I mean, yeah, maybe you did a little warm up before the race, but this is part of your warm up. I mean, the first part of the swim is going to be part of your race warm up. So you really want to hold back as much as you can mentally from laying it all out there.
What do you do with your kicks? Do you ask people to go like 2-stroke or 6-stroke, or does it vary during the swim? Did you give more kick at the end towards the end of the swim so people can get their legs freshed up for the bike ride?
Yeah, triathletes are notorious for not really kicking at all in the water. Yeah. So which is fine. I mean, I don't. There's no problem with that, because you put on the wetsuit and you've got a little more buoyancy. So the kick isn't going to kicking as far as speed goes in swimming is not really that important in terms of the distance. When it comes to like a sprint, like a 100-meter or 200-meter race, you have to have a really fast kick, a strong, powerful kick. When it comes to a distance race, the kick is just really there to make sure you're rotating and then keeping balance in the water. So I'm not too worried about what people are doing with their kick as far as the effort goes. There is definitely a importance on as far as developing a kick rhythm. So I would definitely practice that in the pool, where you can kind of tell, like you can kind of figure out a kick rhythm. We have a drill that we do. It's like we do 6 kicks per stroke, which is like completely exaggerated freestyle. You're reaching out, you're kicking 6 times, and then you're going to the next stroke. And what that does is you sort of can drop that down. So you go 6, and then you try 5, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, and you sort of can get your kick rhythm there. So it feels right and it feels normal, and you're staying balanced in the water. You're rotating your hips. But yeah, towards the end of the race, I like that idea of just kind of giving a little more effort into the kick, so your legs are warmed up. If you haven't been kicking, and then you suddenly get up and run to your bike, and then you jump on your bike, you might experience some cramps. You might experience some difficulty getting going. So,
yeah. All right. Well, I guess people have to figure it out for themselves what works best, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times this stuff is individual. There isn't like a one-size-fits-all rule.
All right, cool. I think there's some good, great information there for a lot of triathletes amongst us. How can people get in touch with you, Kevin?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So triswimcoach.com is the website. We have a newsletter there, and we have 5 swim lessons you can sign up for on the site. And that's just emails that you'll get with tips on triathlon swimming and how to get going. And we kind of tell a little story, so it helps people to relate. And that's probably the best way. And then we have a Facebook page if you want to check that out, just facebook.com/triswimcoach.
All right, cool. I'll definitely put those links in the show notes. Anything else you want to plug?
Not really. Just one thing that the last couple months, we partnered with Xterra, and they're known for their wetsuits, but a lot of my swimmers have been using the lava pants. And I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's something that's a nice tool to help you with swimming. It's kind of along the lines of what I was talking about with the fins, where it helps you to learn the drills without having to worry so much about sinking legs and things like that. And so a lot of people have been raving about them. I personally haven't tried them yet, but I really like them. And if any of your listeners want to pick up a pair, we have a $50 off code that we have with the website. So if you want to just go to triswimcoach.com, opt in with the newsletter, and then just shoot me an email, kevin@triswimcoach.com, and I will send you the code if you want to try out the lava pants, and it's $50 off. So that's just something that I just recently discovered, and I think it's a great tool. So I just wanted to offer that to your listeners.
All right, cool, excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, Kevin. It's been really interesting, and we'll keep an eye on the website, and hopefully we'll get some people to sign up for your newsletter here.
Right on. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me on the show, and good luck with everything you're doing in your podcast.
All right, thank you very much. Cheers, Kevin.
Cheers.